So I have the panels already milled, but before I just start getting into this and starting the mortising, I'm just going to talk a little bit real quick about creating a template. If you don't purchase these templates, how to create the template. And I mean, it's pretty simple, but basically you want to start out with maybe an oversized blank and then establish a center line. So I would take this, this is perfectly square. I'm going to, establish that center line, and then it's laying it out from the actual diagram itself. But you're essentially doing this where the bottom feet is going to be the reference of the bottom edge of this. And then from that center line, you're going to lay out all the mortises. So it's just 3 mortises, but you really want to come from the center out. And the way to think about it too is to create that mortise is a 5/8. So even the center line of that, I'll come over, find the center line to that mortise, the center line to this mortise. This one is obviously right in the center, and the same here. I'm going to find the center this way, so those two are the same, and the center this way, those are the same. And then I'll just offset this so that we can do the guide bushing setup. So once you have that done, you're going to have a 5/8 inch bit, and that's where you're going to come in. Obviously, the reason you don't want to shape this yet is because you need reference faces, so that's what's important here. But you're going to come off the fence of your router table, and you're going to do like a plunge cut. So you'll come off your fence, this will be set up perfectly to do that first mortise, and then you're going to come in with stops set up on the fence. So you come down, travel, and then back up type situation. Same's going to happen for these, and that's just a flip-flop, but you're probably going to have to do a left and a right setup. Let's see if that's true. Since these are through mortises, you probably could do the same deal where you'll have this laid out and you set up the fence, you come in, you plunge down, and then you're going to travel. So you plunge down, it comes out right here, you travel and stops here, then you can just flip the template over and do the same thing since it's obviously going all the way through. So that makes those two very easy. So it's really not that difficult to do. What's easier is just to buy them from me, but that is totally your option. So I'm actually going to use this piece as a backer board. So when I come through and plunge all the way through, I'm not going to end up going into my bench itself. So that's something you're going to have once you've created a template. Getting a little bit ahead of myself. Once you've had the mortises laid out, because that's the most complicated part with the template, then of course plotting out the arcs, and that's just coming in, measuring plots, bending it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as this. Get it close, kind of trust your eye, and then you're just really going to go through and bandsaw close to that line, and then spoke shave, sand it if you have like an orbital sander, edge sander, and just fair in all these curves and make it look real sweet. If you want to go a step further, if you're extra crazy, a lot of times when I'm establishing a template that's very important, I only do half of it. And in that way, I rotate that over. So even if it's, that half is what it is. And now when you flip it over, it's symmetrical. So that way, it's not going to look a little bit cattywampus. So that's a method you could do too. So I'm ready to go. Got my template. I want to talk a little bit about the router and the bits that I'm going to use for this. So one thing I want to point out, hey, even though I'm not going to use this bit, a lot of times I use a 3/8 inch diameter cut. So here's a bit. It's a 3/8 inch diameter cut, upcut spiral with a 1/2 inch shank. So there's your collet assembly. Obviously, that's the 1/2 inch shank one. So you'll see in a lot of things I do, I use a 3/8 inch bit with a 3/8 inch shank. And it's not a lot of people are familiar with the 3/8 inch shank. And what that allows you to do is you can see that you have a limit here in the depth of cut you can do. So if you're using a jig, like we're going to be using this template, so that's subtracting a 1/4 inch in the depth that you can get. Not an issue here, we're only going 3/4 inch deep, but that bit has to reach down about 1 inch. So if you're doing something where you need 1.5 inches, you could end up getting limited because this cut is only 1.25 inches. So that's where the 3/8 inch shank comes in, because you can get longer ones of these. And so here's one that's pretty freaking long, but that's going to allow me to reach down inside, and it's going to make up for whatever jig or template that I'm sitting on top of. A lot of times, like with my the mortiser that I have, the Morley mortiser, not very creative with names, you're on top of a 3/4 inch piece. So already you've lost 3/4 inch of depth. So that's where these guys come in handy, and you just get a 3/8 inch collet that fits it. And you're not gonna end up hitting or rubbing up against where this goes from 3/8 to 1/2 inch. That's the issue here. So for this, I don't need the extra depth. I'm gonna use the 1/2 inch, 3/8 diameter, 1/2 inch shank, and the 5/8 guide bushing. And so this is, for people who are not familiarized with it, basically, this is kind of like a universal one. So it just twists off, and this will go on the Porter cable. It sits down in that recess, and then I'm going to attach this on. And what that does is it guides you. So it'll just come along like so. Now, if you didn't want to use a guide bushing, you didn't have a guide bushing, you could also just leave your template square, mark out your actual piece, your stock square, and you could just reference off the edge and do it, and just kind of plunge to it with a fence. This is a lot easier to do, and it's nice because it makes the left and the right side identical. Even if your math is off, they're going to be identical. So when we do this, it will be, again, a reference face. It's going to go like so to the left, and then it's going to scoot over to the right. I'm not going to flip-flop this, because if I am a little bit off center, I don't want things to get out of whack. So templates are great for that. Porter cable plunge router. So it's got to be a plunge router to be able to do this, because you're going to have to go down in multiple steps to be able to clean this out. The one downside to using 1/4 inch material is as you start doing this, it's lifting those chips out, and it gets caught up within this little opening here, this cavity, and you're not getting full depth. So I'll have my compressor, my little air, and I'll do it, blow it out, do it, blow it out. So it's a little bit time consuming, but you will get a really nice result. And then the last pass, you'll clean it out and do one last pass, make sure you've got all of it. So I'm gonna get this guy set up. And again, if you didn't see that, this is the little recess here that this guy is gonna sit down in, and then this screws onto it.